The phone call came while Evelyn was waiting for her medical test results. The voice on the other end was cold and unfamiliar, yet heartbreakingly recognizable. "Mom, we're going to Europe tomorrow," said her daughter, Claire. "I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Don't worry, you'll be fine." Before Evelyn could breathe a word, the line went dead. For a moment, the hospital around her disappeared. The hum of fluorescent lights, the murmur of other patients, it all faded. 40 years of motherhood, erased with a single, heartless phone call. Her hands trembled as she placed the phone down. The nurse called her name, but she didn't hear it. Claire had always been her pride, her reason for surviving after her husband, Thomas, passed away 6 months ago. Since his death, Claire had been visiting more often, helping with groceries, smiling sweetly as she insisted, "Mom, you should rest. Let me handle everything." Evelyn had believed her daughter's kindness was love. Now she realized it was strategy. The beach house wasn't just property, it was Thomas's legacy, their dream home built after decades of sacrifice. Selling it was like erasing every memory they'd created there. But Evelyn didn't cry. Not this time. The shock slowly hardened into something else, something sharper than grief. As she sat in that sterile hospital chair, a calm determination took hold. Her daughter thought she had taken everything from her. But what Claire didn't know was that Thomas had never been a man who left his wife unprepared. 3 days before his death, Thomas had handed Evelyn a small black notebook and said, "Keep this safe. If anything ever happens to me, open it when you're ready." In her grief, she'd locked it away and forgotten it existed, until now. She remembered his words, the way he'd held her hand with quiet intensity, the unspoken meaning behind his final kiss on her forehead. As she left the hospital, the autumn wind stung her face, but she didn't flinch. The world saw a fragile widow. Inside, she was something else entirely, a woman on the edge of revelation. That night, she unlocked the old drawer in her bedroom, her pulse pounding. There it was, the notebook, untouched since the funeral. The first page held a short message in Thomas's handwriting. "If you're reading this, my love, it means the world we built is now yours alone. But not everything is what it seems. Be patient, be silent, and you will discover the truth." Beneath the note lay an envelope marked confidential. Her fingers brushed against it, trembling between fear and curiosity. Claire thought she had taken her mother's life away, but she had no idea what kind of secret her father had left behind. Evelyn's lips curved into a quiet, knowing smile. What lay in that envelope would change everything: her home, her family, and her daughter's destiny. The woman who had just been discarded like old furniture was about to rise again, not with anger, but with wisdom, patience, and a hidden power no one could imagine. "You think you've sold my life, Claire," Evelyn whispered to the night. "But you've only sold your soul." And that was the moment Evelyn decided. She wouldn't take revenge in anger. She would do it in silence, slowly, gracefully, until the day her daughter realized the real price of betrayal. Because what Claire didn't know was that her mother wasn't broken. She was waiting. And the game had just begun. That night, Evelyn sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the dark glass. Every glow reminded her of something Thomas used to say, "The darkest nights always reveal who truly stands beside you." He'd said that after they built their beach house 20 years ago. The house wasn't luxury, it was love made visible. A small wooden cottage perched above the sea, filled with laughter, the scent of cinnamon coffee, and music from Thomas's old radio. Every wall carried the echo of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and late-night talks about dreams they could never afford. Claire had grown up there. She had learned to walk on its sand, learned to swim in its waves, and learned to argue at its dinner table. It was the place where her first boyfriend met her parents and where her father had taught her how to drive. Evelyn still remembered the look on Thomas's face the day Claire left for college, the pride in his eyes and the quiet worry in his smile. He had whispered, "She's our heart, Evelyn. She'll come back to us." But hearts change when the world teaches them the price of ambition. After Thomas's death, Claire's visits became more frequent, at first filled with compassion, then with subtle control. "Mom, you shouldn't drive so much. It's unsafe. Maybe I should handle your bank account. You don't need the stress." Evelyn had believed it was care. It was convenience. She hadn't noticed the new jewelry, the designer bags, the whispered arguments with her husband, Mark, about investments and losses. She hadn't realized that every smile came with calculation. Now, in the silence of her room, Evelyn felt every lie hit her at once. The beach house wasn't just sold, it was stolen piece by piece. Every memory she'd shared with her husband had been reduced to a transaction. The car Thomas had cherished, washed every Sunday and called old reliable, was gone too. The betrayal wasn't in the sale, it was in the ease of it. She picked up a framed photograph from the bedside table. It was taken at the beach house, Thomas laughing with Claire as they built a crooked sandcastle. The tide had washed it away minutes later, and Thomas had told Claire, "Everything we build disappears one day. What matters is who stands beside you while it's there." Evelyn's throat tightened. Her daughter had once stood beside her. Now she was the one tearing everything down. The night deepened, and Evelyn opened the notebook again. Beneath the first letter was another message written in Thomas's sharp, careful handwriting. "The ones who betray love for money eventually lose both. If you're reading this, Evelyn, remember, you are not powerless. Truth, patience, and silence can rebuild anything that greed destroys." The words pulsed through her like electricity. For the first time since his death, she didn't feel like a grieving widow, she felt like a strategist. Claire believed she had ended her mother's chapter, but she had only turned the first page of a story far greater than she could imagine. Evelyn set the notebook down and whispered, "You were right, Thomas. The darkest nights reveal who stands beside you. And now I know who doesn't." She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the stars above the city skyline. Somewhere beyond them, she liked to think Thomas was watching. She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection merging with the lights below. Tomorrow, she would open that sealed envelope. Tomorrow, the truth would begin to unfold, quietly, gracefully, like a storm preparing to break. Claire had taken her house. But she had no idea she'd just awakened something far more dangerous than anger, a mother's calm resolve. The morning sun crept through the thin curtains, casting long stripes of light across Evelyn's bedroom floor. For the first time in months, she didn't wake up feeling weak or lonely. There was a steady fire in her chest, the kind that burned quietly but never faded. The black notebook still lay open on her nightstand, and beside it sat the mysterious envelope Thomas had left her. Her fingers hovered over it, trembling not from fear but anticipation. She had spent the night replaying her daughter's call in her head, that cold voice, the careless tone, the click at the end. It no longer hurt. It ignited her. Claire thought she had stripped her mother of everything, but she didn't know the one thing Thomas had always said, a wise person hides power where no one expects to find it. Evelyn broke the seal. Inside were several folded papers and a small brass key attached to a tag that read, Locker 217, Grand City Bank. Beneath the key, a letter in Thomas's handwriting waited, patient, precise, and filled with the same warmth he had carried in life. My love, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone. Don't be afraid. I know you. You'll think you've lost everything, but you haven't. Over the years, I invested quietly. The house, the truck, the savings, they were never all we had. I built something for you, something no one can take away. Use it only when the time feels right. The world will underestimate you. Let it. There's power in being invisible. Evelyn's breath caught. Thomas, the simple man everyone thought had only a pension and an old pickup truck, had left behind secrets that could change everything. She unfolded the next document, property deeds, share certificates, and an unfamiliar company name, ENT Holdings. Her initials and his. He had built a financial fortress in their names, hidden in plain sight. As she read on, her confusion turned to awe. There were records of a small motel by the coast, an apartment complex downtown, and several rental properties under the company. Thomas had quietly turned their modest life into an empire. He had never said a word, not because he didn't trust her, but because he wanted her to live peacefully, without worry. And now, she realized, the entire empire belonged to her. A soft laugh escaped her lips, not of joy, but disbelief. The same daughter who had sold her beach house for quick cash had no idea she had just betrayed a woman worth more than a fortune. Evelyn stood up, looking at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't broken or helpless anymore. She looked like someone rediscovering her identity, a mother who had been underestimated one too many times. She remembered something Thomas had once told her while watching the ocean from their porch. The sea never rushes, Evelyn. It takes its time, yet it wears down even the strongest stone. That was the kind of revenge she would take, slow, silent, unstoppable. She tucked the documents back into the envelope and placed it in her purse. She would visit Grand City Bank today. No calls to lawyers yet, no confrontation with Claire. Not until she knew exactly what kind of power she held. But deep down, a plan was already forming. Claire had believed she was erasing her mother's life. In truth, she had only cleared the path for Evelyn to rise again, stronger, wiser, and hidden behind the mask of a frail widow. Before leaving the room, Evelyn looked once more at the photo on the wall, the three of them at the beach house, wind in their hair, laughter frozen in time. "You protected me even in death," she whispered. "Now it's my turn to protect what's ours." She slipped on her coat, clutched the brass key tightly, and walked out the door. The wind outside was sharp and cold, but her steps were steady. The world thought Evelyn Bennett was a forgotten widow. But that morning, a new woman walked toward the truth, one who carried not grief, but purpose. And that purpose was about to change everything. "You said," Evelyn arrived at Grand City Bank that afternoon, her old scarf wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The building loomed tall and polished, marble floors, gold lettering, and a chill that smelled of money and secrets. To everyone watching, she was just another fragile widow clutching an envelope. No one could have guessed she was walking in to claim an empire. At the reception desk, she handed over the brass key Thomas had left her. The young banker smiled politely, unaware of the storm he had just unlocked. A few signatures later, Evelyn was escorted to a private booth deep inside the vault. The air was cold, and her hands shook, not from fear, but from the gravity of what she was about to uncover. Locker 217 opened with a soft click. Inside was another sealed envelope, a small black USB drive, and a typed letter dated 3 years before Thomas's death. The letter began simply, "If you've reached this far, Evelyn, it means the time has come for you to know everything. The company we built, ENT Holdings, belongs entirely to you. Hidden beneath its quiet name are 7 properties, 2 trust accounts, and shares in businesses that have grown beyond what I ever imagined. The world thinks we lived modestly, and that's how I wanted it. But now you must take control. I built this for you, not for anyone else." Her chest tightened as she read. The words were calm, practical, but beneath them lay years of love and foresight. Thomas had always been simple in his gestures. Morning coffee, shared walks, quiet laughter, but in silence, he had built a fortress of security for her. Inside the folder were blueprints, receipts, legal documents, all showing a level of organization that stunned her. ENT Holdings wasn't just a name, it was a legacy, stretching across cities, tied to properties under false corporate labels so cleverly arranged even Claire's greedy eyes had missed them. For a long moment, Evelyn just stared at the documents, her breath uneven. The room felt smaller, heavier, as if every piece of paper carried the weight of both love and loss. Then, slowly, a single tear escaped her eye, but this time, it wasn't sorrow. It was power being born. By the time she stepped out of the vault, Evelyn Bennett wasn't the same woman who had entered. She wasn't the grieving mother who had been betrayed. She was now the quiet owner of everything her daughter thought she had taken. She took a cab downtown to the office of an old acquaintance, Mr. Graham, the lawyer who had once handled Thomas's small business affairs. He looked up in surprise when she walked in. "Evelyn, it's been years." "I need your help," she said softly, placing the folder on his desk. "I want to make sure all of this is protected, and no one, not even my daughter, can touch it." Mr. Graham flipped through the documents, his eyebrows lifting higher with every page. "Mrs. Bennet, this is incredible. You understand what this means?" "Yes," she said. "It means I finally know who I am." He leaned back, smiling. "You don't need protection, Mrs. Bennet. You need management." "No," she replied firmly. "I need silence. For now, everything must stay hidden." He studied her carefully, sensing the steel behind her calm tone. "You're planning something." "I'm planning justice," she said, her voice steady. "But it will be the kind of justice that speaks softly." When she left the office, dusk had already fallen. Streetlights shimmered across wet pavement. Evelyn walked slowly, letting the rhythm of her heels echo like a countdown. Claire thought she had won. She thought her mother was powerless. But true power didn't shout. It waited. That night, Evelyn sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the rain wash over the city. For the first time since Thomas's death, she smiled without sadness. She whispered into the quiet, "You were right, Thomas. Patience wears down every stone." From that moment on, she decided her silence would be her greatest weapon. She would watch, she would plan, and she would strike only when the lesson would be unforgettable. Her daughter's betrayal had begun this story, but Evelyn's awakening would finish at point 3 weeks later. Evelyn's phone rang again, the same familiar number, but a very different tone. Claire's voice, once dripping with arrogance, now trembled like a leaf caught in a storm. "Mom," she said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably, "I just wanted to check on you." "How are things?" Evelyn's lips curved slightly. She had been expecting this. "I'm well, dear," she replied gently. "Just taking things one day at a time." There was silence on the other end. Evelyn could almost hear the sound of chaos, the faint murmur of airport announcements, a man's angry voice in the background, and Claire's sharp breathing. "Mom," Claire finally blurted out, "Edward's business deal in Europe fell apart. It's complicated. We had to come back early." "Already?" Evelyn asked, her tone even. "But didn't you sell my house for that trip?" Claire's voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He said it was a guaranteed investment, but..." She stopped, catching her breath. "I'll explain later. I just need a place to stay for a few days." Evelyn looked out the window, where the rain traced slow paths down the glass. "Of course, dear," she said softly. "This will always be your home." That evening, through the lace curtains, Evelyn watched a taxi pull up in front of her house. The door opened, and Claire stepped out, alone. No Edward. No designer luggage. Just a single worn-out suitcase and a face carved by regret. She walked up the path slowly, every step weighed down by invisible guilt. When Evelyn opened the door, the once proud daughter looked like a stranger. Her hair was messy, her eyes hollow, and her once bright smile was gone. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have." Evelyn raised a hand gently. "Come inside. We'll talk later." Claire sat at the kitchen table, staring at the teacup Evelyn placed before her. She wrapped her fingers around it like it was the only warmth left in her world. "Edward left me," she finally said. "He took what was left of the money and disappeared. The apartment, it's gone too. The bank says the ownership isn't in our name anymore." "Oh," Evelyn said quietly. "That must be difficult." "It doesn't make sense," Claire went on, panic rising. The documents show the building belongs to some company called E&T Holdings. Have you heard of it? Evelyn's heart skipped, but her face remained perfectly calm. No, dear, she said smoothly. That doesn't sound familiar. Claire's hands began to shake. They sent me an eviction notice. I don't even have a week to move out. I've lost everything, Mom. I don't know what to do. Evelyn took a slow sip of her tea, her eyes soft but her mind sharp. The lesson was unfolding exactly as she had foreseen, not by force, but by consequence. You'll be fine here until you find your footing, she said, reaching across the table. You just need rest. And time to think. That night, as Claire unpacked her single suitcase in her old childhood room, Evelyn stood by the doorway, watching quietly. The once spoiled woman who used to demand luxury sheets and imported candles was now folding her few remaining clothes into an old wooden drawer. The air between them carried a quiet electricity, the tension between guilt and forgiveness. When Claire finally broke down, sobbing into her hands, Evelyn wanted to hold her, to whisper that everything would be all right. But she didn't. Not yet. This pain, this humility, was necessary. Thomas had always said, some lessons must be lived to be learned. As the night deepened, Evelyn sat in the living room surrounded by silence and thought of the irony. The woman who had once been thrown away like old furniture was now sheltering the same daughter who had sold her world. But Evelyn wasn't done. She would help Claire rebuild, yes, but not before the girl truly understood what she had destroyed. She looked up at the portrait of Thomas above the fireplace, his kind eyes glinting through the candlelight. It's starting, my love, she whispered. She's home, and now she'll learn what home really means. Upstairs, Claire cried herself to sleep, clutching an old photo of her parents at the beach house, unaware that her quiet, gentle mother was the unseen force behind the storm that had just turned her life upside down. And as the wind howled outside, Evelyn smiled softly. Justice didn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, it came wearing a mother's calm face and a cup of tea. The following week, the rhythm of the house changed. For the first time in years, Evelyn and Claire shared meals, quiet evenings, and cautious conversations. Claire tried to smile, tried to help with chores, but the sadness in her eyes gave her away. The once proud woman who used to command every room now moved like a ghost, soft, apologetic, and uncertain of her place in her own mother's home. Evelyn noticed everything, every flinch, every silence. She let her daughter breathe, offering tea, space, and patience, because true lessons never grow in anger. They bloom in reflection. One evening, after dinner, Claire found an old photo album on the shelf. She flipped through the pages, pictures of her childhood, the beach house, her parents' laughter frozen in sunlight. She touched one photo where Thomas held her on his shoulders. He'd be so disappointed in me, she whispered, her voice breaking. I turned everything he built into ashes. Evelyn's hands paused on the teapot. She didn't look up. Maybe disappointment isn't the right word, she said quietly. Sometimes love allows us to fall just so we can learn how to stand. Claire stared at her mother, confused but too tired to ask what she meant. Later that night, when the house was silent, Evelyn called Mr. Graham, her lawyer. It's time, she said. Prepare everything. I want my daughter to see the truth with her own eyes. The next morning, Evelyn invited Claire to come with her to meet someone who might help. Claire didn't question it. She was too desperate for a lifeline. They arrived at Mr. Graham's office, a quiet, sunlit space with shelves lined with legal books and framed certificates. Mrs. Bennet, the lawyer greeted warmly. And this must be your daughter. Claire nodded nervously. Thank you for seeing me, sir. My situation is complicated. I don't have money for... Mr. Graham raised his hand kindly. No worries, Miss Claire. You don't owe me anything. Your mother has already handled all the fees. Claire turned to Evelyn, shocked. Mom? Why would you? Because it's time you know the truth, Evelyn interrupted softly. Mr. Graham handed Claire a thick folder. Please, read this carefully. As Claire scanned the documents, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to shock. What is this? She whispered. These papers say you own the apartment building I lived in. And these are company shares. And, Mom, this company, ENT Holdings, belongs to you. Evelyn nodded, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. Yes, your father built it quietly over the years. He left everything to me. Everything. Claire's lips trembled. Then, when I sold your beach house. You sold something that was never yours to sell, Evelyn said firmly. And when you spoke to me like a burden, you forgot who made you who you are. Claire's tears spilled over, but Evelyn didn't move closer. I let you believe I was powerless, she continued. I let you walk away with everything because I needed you to see what greed does to love. I could have stopped you at any moment, but I didn't, because some pain is the only teacher that works. Claire shook her head, broken. You knew everything, all this time? Yes. And you just watched me fall? Evelyn's eyes softened. No. I watched you learn. There's a difference. For a long moment, the room was silent except for Claire's quiet sobs. Finally, she whispered, I don't deserve your forgiveness. Evelyn reached across the table and took her hand. You don't need to earn it. You need to understand it. Your father left us wealth, but I want to leave you something more valuable. Wisdom. Money fades. Character stays. Claire broke down completely, her tears falling onto the folder that held the truth. I was so blind, Mom. I hurt you, and you still saved me. Evelyn smiled faintly. That's what mothers do. But this time you'll stand beside me, not above me, not beneath me. Mr. Graham quietly excused himself, leaving the two women alone. Claire wiped her face, her expression no longer just sorrow, it was awakening. For the first time, Evelyn saw something in her daughter's eyes that had been missing for years, humility and the beginning of understanding. As they walked out of the office into the crisp morning air, Claire took a deep breath. What do I do now, Mom? Evelyn looked straight ahead. You start over. You earn back what you lost. Not the money, but the trust. And in that moment, Claire understood. Her mother's silence had never been punishment. It had been love in its purest, most painful form. The truth had been revealed, and now, the healing could finally begin. Months passed. The rhythm of Evelyn's home had transformed. Laughter had returned, the scent of fresh coffee filled the kitchen again, and the silence that once carried bitterness now carried peace. Claire had changed. She no longer measured her worth in money or success, she measured it in gratitude. Every morning, she helped her mother in the garden. Every evening they shared tea on the porch. The daughter who once sold everything for greed was now rebuilding everything through humility. One Sunday morning, Claire walked into the living room holding a letter. Her hands trembled slightly. Mom, she said softly, I've been offered a job at a women's support center downtown. They help widows and single mothers get back on their feet. I want to work there. Evelyn looked up from her book, her eyes glistening. Are you sure, dear? It won't be easy. Claire smiled faintly. I don't want easy anymore. I want meaningful. Evelyn felt her chest swell with quiet pride. Your father would have been proud, she whispered. Claire knelt beside her and took her hand. No, Mom. He is proud. And so am I, proud that I got a second chance to be your daughter. For a long moment, they just sat there, two women bound not by blood alone, but by forgiveness and hard-earned understanding. Outside, the waves crashed softly against the shore, carrying the memory of a beach house that had once been a symbol of loss, now reborn as a symbol of growth. That evening, Evelyn wrote in her journal, the same black notebook Thomas had once given her. True wealth isn't in property or possessions. It's in the hearts that learn, fall, and rise again. Sometimes love means letting someone break so they can learn how to rebuild themselves. When Claire returned from her first day at the support center, she looked radiant, not with luxury, but with purpose. I spent the whole day listening to women tell their stories, Mom, she said. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. Everyone falls. Not everyone learns. Evelyn smiled, tears welling in her eyes. And that's why you'll help them stand. That night, as the sky turned deep orange and the sea shimmered like liquid gold, Evelyn whispered into the fading light, "You did it, Thomas." She found herself. The camera would fade on the image of mother and daughter sitting together on the porch, not as victim and betrayer, but as equals who had finally healed what greed had broken. If this story touched your heart, tell us what you would have done in Evelyn's place. Would you forgive, or would you walk away? Speech Balloon, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might inspire someone who needs hope today. Red Heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can discover that sometimes silence teaches louder than words.